Justice Alito says he knows who leaked the Dobbs draft. Quote, it made us all targets for assassination. What's up, podcast listeners? Welcome to the show. That's going to be one of the topics we get into today. You guys remember when this draft leak, it was the Dobbs draft. It leaked around this time last year, and they still haven't found out who it is yet. So that's an article we're going to get into today. We're going to discuss a little bit about that. Also, I want to get into the Biden Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, wants the U.S. military, get this, folks, this is going to blow your mind. This is how crazy this stuff has gotten. So Jennifer Granholm wants the U.S. military to adopt an all-electric vehicle fleet in 7 years. We are reaching stupid levels of just climate change Zionists, man. I mean, these people are literally turning this into a religion. Me personally, I think we all know the climate changes, okay? I think we all know that. The problem is the hubrism in some people that think they can actually change the climate on a planet. They think they are so big and bad that they're going to be able to change the climate on a planet. And what they say, every time I say this, is, well, it was the Industrial Revolution that changed it, so all we got to do is just change it back. Folks, these people cannot even predict the weather a week out. And so we're supposed to change our entire culture, society, and economy over what scientists say may happen if we do this? Or, you know, it's like, it's so dumb, man. We are reaching epic levels of stupidity in this country. And so that's one of the things I want to get into. It's, if you listen to my previous episodes, I talk about this. This is actually a big topic we talk about a lot on this show, because I think I pick these articles because I feel like it's not just what's the most current thing, like what's everybody talking about, what's popular now. Like, that's one thing. Okay, I get that. That's, you know, that's entertaining. There's definitely podcasts that do that. But I want this show to be about what's happening, what events are taking place in news and politics that actually impact our country. Things that are actually impacting our country, our economy, our culture, society. That's what I want this show to be for. And I feel like if I just get the people informed about these issues, then when it comes election time, or without even having an election, I just want to get people informed with what is going on. It is so vital that people have accurate and up-to-date information. Informed people make good decisions. Uninformed people make bad decisions. I say that all the time. And right now, we are witnessing what happens when you make bad decision after bad decision. That's it. That's exactly what we're experiencing right now. And so I just feel like if I just get people informed, then we'll stop making these dumb, stupid decisions, and definitely stop giving all this control to the government to make the dumb, stupid decisions for us. And so that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. And then lastly, a whistleblower reveals law enforcement isn't vetting sponsors for child migrants at the southern border. That's an issue, folks. Again, something that's having a huge impact on our country. When you open the floodgates and let millions and millions of people into our country in 2.5 years, you're gonna have a problem. And it's gonna get worse. It's not even getting better. They're not even plugging the hole, folks. Not only are they not plugging the hole, but they're bailing water inside of the boat. So it's like, and I can't blame just one party. Like this, I'm not joking. This administration has taken it to a whole nother level. And we're going to get into why I think that is happening. But the southern border has always been a problem. Through administration. It's always been a problem. And nobody wants to fix it. Why? Why? It's so easy to fix. Because they don't want to fix it, folks. They want the southern border an absolute disaster. Okay? They want chaos at the southern border because it's an election issue. Votes. That is all these people think about, is votes, man. They're power hungry. They cannot allow people to realize that if they just fix things, then we don't need them. And they cannot allow that to happen. And so they leave things like the southern border open into absolute chaos because it's a problem that they want to hang over our heads. They'll say it every single election. You want us to fix the border, you got to vote for us. You vote for us, we'll fix the border. You vote for us, we'll give amnesty to everybody coming in. Like, it doesn't matter what party it is. Both parties do it, and it's been happening for decades. But this administration, I have to say, has taken it to a whole new level. You guys are never going to believe this. I have audio of Democrats that got emotional talking about the southern border and how big of a crisis it is. And it's actually just good to know that we have some Democrats on board and noticing the crisis at the southern border. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So thank you for tuning in, and let's do this.
You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And you never know where Stephen may go. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. All right, so I got an article here dated April 28th, hat tip to Victor Nava, and it's from the New York Post. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito revealed Friday that he has a pretty good idea of the identity of the person behind the leak of his draft opinion overturning Roe v. Wade last year. Alito, who wrote the majority in Dobbs v. Jackson's women's health organization, told the Wall Street Journal that the unprecedented breach created an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust inside the nation's highest court. Yep, I cannot disagree with that. This never happened before, folks. We never had a draft decision leak out of the Supreme Court of the United States. Like, that's just insane. We have never seen this many attacks on the Supreme Court. Not in my lifetime. And I've been following politics for a long time. I've never heard of anybody leaking a draft ruling. And not only that, but they leaked it, and then the stormtroopers from the political party that supports that ideology went to the judges' homes and intimidated the judges at their homes. Like, this is like, it doesn't get any more obvious than that. And I don't know if this article is going to get into what the Dobbs decision was. And so let's read on here more and see if it talks about what exactly the Dobbs decision was for anyone out there that probably doesn't know what it is. All right, let's do this. So, quote, "We're trying to get back to normal operations as much as we can, but it was damaging," Alito said of the unauthorized release of his draft opinion to Politico in May of 2022, more than a month before the final Dobbs ruling came down. An investigation into the leak was ordered by Chief Justice John Roberts, but the Marshal of the Supreme Court, Gail Curley, said in January she has been unable to definitively determine the leaker's identity. Well, that was a mouthful right there. Quote, I personally hate, man, I don't know. I need some coffee or something. All right. Quote, I personally have a pretty good idea who is responsible, but that's different from the level of proof that is needed to name somebody, Alito told the Journal. Despite Curley's failure to finger the culprit, the justice told the Journal that she, quote, did a good job with the resources that were available to her. Now, think about this. If the shoe was on the other foot and a Republican had leaked a draft ruling, what do you think would have happened? They would have got nailed. They probably would have been sentenced to death for treason. This is how unequal and just absolutely weaponized our justice system has become in the last 2.5 years. Not even more than that. In the last 6 years, the Democrats have completely weaponized the justice system against their political opponents. It started with Donald Trump. And the bad thing is I remember when this all happened. And so the Democrats kept talking about Donald Trump breaking constitutional norms. He's just the most abnormal things for a president to do. And then they go and impeach him. They create a congressional investigation. I don't know, like 4 of those. They did a completely partisan impeachment in the House of Representatives, which means not one Republican sided with the Democrats. And instead of sucking up their TDS, instead of kind of just accepting their Trump derangement syndrome and not doing it for the better of the country and its people, they just went right along through it. Not only did they go right through it, they were bragging about it. They announced they were going to do it. Folks, we have a political party that has advertised and announced and campaigned on locking up Donald Trump, has campaigned on it. People like Alvin Bragg, people like Rashida Tlaib. You guys remember she made that stupid TikTok video where she's walking down the hall? No, she wasn't walking down the hall. That was another time that she was bragging about impeaching Donald Trump. That came later. But before, she was speaking to a crowd. I don't know if she was at a college or a university or something doing a speech, and she said, "We're going to impeach the mother effer." That's what she said. So she spouted it out. She was really excited. I don't know why. I don't know if it gets her rocks off thinking about Donald Trump all the time. And then later, when the Democrats and the completely partisan impeachment won, the first one went through, she was so happy doing that video, walking down the hall. We're finally gonna impeach Donald Trump. But they had no idea what they were doing. They just did it because I don't know. I don't really know why they did it. Obviously, it's for their base. They did it for political reasons. That's it. But I think they were really hoping to get enough Republicans on board, maybe some weary Republicans that could be swayed either way, and they were going to try and they were going to overthrow the president. They tried removing a duly elected president, almost like a soft coup. So, that's what we were experiencing. That's what we were witnessing during that first impeachment. And then that failed, so they didn't get rid of him. And then it went on to another congressional investigation. And then it went on to a second impeachment about a Ukraine phone call where Alexander Vindman. Okay, so this is what happened. During the phone call, nobody said anything. Nobody had said it was bad. And the lawyers were around. Nobody said it was bad. And then weeks after the phone call, Alexander Vindman, as a whistleblower, comes up and says, "Oh, well, what he did on that phone call is just disgraceful." And so, obviously, it was a huge uproar. The media sucked it up. They soaked it in as there was like a fat kid eating cake. And then Donald Trump released the transcript. He was like, there was nothing wrong with this phone call. Here's the transcript. Read it, which was insane. I don't think the Democrats expected him to do that because no other president would have done that. So he said, "You know what? Here, look at it." And then everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, there's nothing here. There was nothing wrong with that phone call. You can read the transcripts right now." It was another coup attempt. They tried to overthrow Donald Trump, the duly elected president, not once, but twice, by weaponizing the impeachment process. Yes. And then come to find out, he was talking to Ukraine about Hunter Biden and the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. This whole stuff, all this is connected, folks. The entire situation, all the corruption is all connected to one another. Donald Trump was on the phone with Zelensky trying to get to the bottom of the Biden corruption that we're dealing with now. They knew they had the laptop. They had the laptop since 2019. Okay, and so they knew what was going on. The commander-in-chief was trying to get to the bottom of it. And they accused him of withholding aid, right? That's what they were impeaching him for, withholding aid, a quid pro quo. Okay, so weeks later, maybe even months later, I think even before the impeachment, I would have to check the timeline. But I think before they even held the vote for impeachment, a video of Joe Biden surfaced of him committing a quid pro quo to Ukraine. Essentially leveraging $1 billion to fire a prosecutor. Okay, you're like, okay, that's okay, whatever. That sounds, it's not something that I agree with. Leveraging my money to fire a Ukrainian prosecutor. What do we have to do with Ukrainian prosecutors? Okay, you would have it there. Okay, I get that. But no, the prosecutor was investigating his corrupt son. The business, the gas company Burisma, that his son was peddling influence for. that Joe Biden was essentially the big guy for. The entire laptop scandal, the Ukraine corruption, just that one Ukraine scandal. That's what Donald Trump was trying to get to the bottom of. And they impeached him for it. And then come to find out, now Joe Biden wins the election because they lied about the laptop, those 51 intel agents. Now it comes out that it was all true. That Joe Biden, not only did he leverage $1 billion in aid as a quid pro quo, but he was trying to get rid of a prosecutor that was meddling around in the Burisma corruption. I mean, it is just so amazing. It is so astonishing how brazenly corrupt these people are. I mean, it's just so bizarre how they weaponize that. Anyways, I've gone on too long. Let's get back to this article and find out about this Dobbs decision. The 73-year-old conservative justice also said that he is certain of the motive behind the leak. Quote, it was part of an effort to prevent the Dobbs draft from becoming the decision of the court. And that's how it was used for those 6 weeks by people on the outside, as part of the campaign to try and intimidate the court, arguing that justices thought to support overturning Roe were really, quote, targets of assassination. It was rational for people to believe that they might be able to stop the decision in Dobbs by killing one of us, Alito said of threats that emerged after the leak, including the arrest of an armed man outside the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh days before the ruling was announced. Yeah, so that was the biggest thing of all. Like, folks, if the shoe was on the other foot, this would be huge. If a Republican went to a Supreme Court justice's home to try and assassinate him and them and the family, like, it would be the biggest story of our life. The Republicans intimidate SCOTUS judge, and one Proud Boy tries to assassinate one of the Supreme Court justices. Like, that's what it would be. But we heard almost nothing about it. It was on the news, I think, for one day, maybe two, and it was gone. And I don't even know if CNN or MSNBC even reported on it. If they did, they were probably like, yeah, an unruly protester that had a backpack on got a little too close to Brett Kavanaugh's kitchen window. Like, that's how they report stuff. So brazenly corrupt, so brazenly partisan, and just, it's almost like propaganda. All right, back to the article. Alito also recalled being forced to speak to law students at George Mason University via video conference about 10 days after the leak following the intervention of local police. Quote, our Supreme Court police conferred with the George Mason police and the Arlington police, and they said, quote, it's not a good idea. He shouldn't come here. The security problems will be severe. So I ended up giving the speech by Zoom. Still, there were so many protesters, and they were so loud that you could hear them. Today, according to Alito, he feels safe in large part because he is, quote, driven around in basically a tank. And I'm not really supposed to go anyplace by myself without the tank and my members of the police force. Man, that must suck, man. Could you imagine not being able to do anything without having to go in this tank of giant vehicle, and then you constantly have to have police around it? That just sucks, dude. We have reached some epic... Democrats have brought us into some crazy times in this country, man. Crazy, crazy times. All right, back to the article. The justice dismissed an alternative theory that a conservative trying to lock 5 justices in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade may have been reasonable for the leak, calling the idea infuriating. Quote, look, this made us targets of assassination. Would I do that to myself? He asked. Would the 5 of us have done that to ourselves? It's quite implausible, he said. Yeah, man, like I said, Democrats have brought this place to just an insane level of just disparity. And it's just a shame. And like I always say, this all stems from Democrats unable or unwilling to accept the 2016 election. That's it. They could not accept Hillary Clinton lost. They couldn't. They have lost their mind ever since. Donald Trump had ramped up the corruption machine. He defeated the deep state. He defeated the Washington establishment swamp, the Uniparty, and they are pissed.
But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Like, he openly threatened Donald Trump with our intelligence community. Like a mobster, man. It's like, it's a nice restaurant you got there. It would be a shame for it to burn down. Like a straight mobster, man. That's how the Uniparty is. We are pulling the curtain back on the Washington corrupt swamp every day, more and more. Donald Trump, for whatever reason, forced these people out of the swamp and onto the shores for everybody to see. And they're really taking their masks off by themselves. They removed the mask and they showed everybody who they are. We now know their tactics. We now know their ideologies. We now know how they weaponize the government against people they don't like. Think about this, folks. What if you decided to run for president? Anybody is supposed to be able to run for president. Okay, anybody. Me, you, blow schmo on the corner, any blow is supposed to be able to run for president. And if the people want that person, the people elect that person. It's not up to Nancy Pelosi. It's not up to the Democratic Party and the bureaucratic swamp creatures in our nation's capital to decide who runs for president or who is president. But that's what they think. Donald Trump was the bull in their china shop, man. He was the biggest middle finger the American people could give to the Washington establishment. And that's why I voted for him. I said, screw these people. This guy here, well, let's see. I definitely wasn't voting for Hillary. I was so pissed when they put Hillary Clinton on the stage to run for president. I never liked that woman ever since the Clinton Foundation. Ever since I started reading into the Clinton Foundation, I never liked that family. I liked Bill. I thought Bill was a good president. Actually, I thought he was pretty good, especially during when he teamed up with Newt Gingrich. I thought he was great. I mean, he reversed course. He didn't even reverse course. He just he was like, well, we got to work together. And when he did that, the country started doing great. But once you start reading into what they did to like Haiti and the Clinton Foundation, and then you start getting into Bill Clinton and his dirty deeds, like it was just awful. Really no different than the Biden family, if you really think about it. And I would argue the Biden family is even worse because the Clintons didn't have some drugged up crackhead son messing everything up for them. You know, Chelsea Clinton was actually had a level head. Hunter Biden, my God, man, no, like getting in bed with your dead brother's widow and then cheating on her with a stripper and then getting the stripper pregnant and then not paying child support and essentially abandoning your child. Like, dude, where the hell and how the hell has the Biden family got to where they're at? How is this man president? I mean, this is like Trailer Park Joe stuff, man. And sorry for anybody that's living in a trailer park, but you know what I mean. I mean, the level of drama in those trailer parks, especially the drug-ridden ones, it's crazy, man. It's like some stuff you see out of a movie. And the Bidens are in the White House right now. They're leading this guy around with ice cream cones. He's got his little bib on when he gets his meals fed to him. When he should be, how that's possible, I have no idea. No idea. The guy is as dumb as a box of rocks. And to this day, people should be demanding that cognitive test. There's no doubt about it. Especially now that he's running for president again for a second term. People should most definitely want to see that test. I don't think they're going to be able to pull this off. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it, folks, without COVID. I really don't. I don't know how they're going to be able to do this because, I mean, they were able to get away with so much because a lot of people didn't know who Biden was. I mean, they knew who he was, but they just thought, It's just good old lunch bucket Joe from Scranton. He had to be good. He was Obama's vice president. And then nobody really knew who Joe Biden was. I mean, he's been in politics since he was 29 years old, the youngest person to ever get into office. Because you're supposed to be 30, I think, but he got elected at 29, but he was 30 by the time he was sworn in. And he's been in politics ever since. That is just wild to me. And what's even more disturbing is, why is Joe Biden collecting a paycheck from the taxpayers? The guy's worth like $18 million. Okay, that's what we know about. Obviously, he's worth more than that from all the corrupt money through his LLCs and all the loopholes. I don't know how we ended up on Biden. The guy, listen, I don't know. Because it goes from the corruption in the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party leader, Joe Biden, is a moron. And so that's how it ended up there. But it's, like I always say, the Democrats, they have one standard, their standard. It's like, oh, well, the Republicans are threats to democracy, as they're actively and knowingly destroying democracy by leaking draft decisions and then having your stormtroopers go out and intimidate SCOTUS judges and everything. I mean, it's just crazy. I think, you know what? I think Sam Alito should just say it. Who is it, dude? Why can't he leak it? And then that we can do our research. I'll be more than willing to dig into this person, whoever it is. Just leak the name. Who is it? Give me a name. Someone else is going to be able to do a lot more, whoever's got more sources. I don't have any sources. My sources are the internet. But there's obviously people out there that can dig into whoever this person is. So Sam Alito should just say who it is. I'm not saying tell everybody, don't make it a public announcement, but just tell a couple reporters so we can find out who it is, man. This person needs to be held accountable. Because if you don't hold these people accountable, then they're just going to do it again. That's why we're dealing with the stuff we're dealing with now. Because accountability has completely eluded the Biden administration since the beginning. Nobody's been fired. Nobody has resigned. Not for anything. Nothing. And this administration essentially destroys everything it touches. I mean, literally everything it touches, it destroys. We would have been better off if the Biden administration didn't do anything, just left it alone. We would have been better off. Yeah, I mean, it's true. And it's getting worse, actively getting worse every single day. And so if you weren't aware, there was a whistleblower that revealed that law enforcement isn't vetting sponsors for child migrants.
Good afternoon, Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Japal, and distinguished members of the committee. It is an honor to be here. I thank you for the invitation to share my testimony. My goal is to inspire action to safeguard the lives of migrant children, including the staggering 85,000 that are missing. Today, children will work overnight shifts at slaughterhouses, factories, restaurants to pay their debts to smugglers and traffickers. Today, children will be sold for sex. Today, children will call a hotline to report they are being abused, neglected, and trafficked. And we don't know if they're going to get the help they need. And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration, part of Operation Artemis. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
And so finally, there are Democrats that are completely outraged about this crisis and the situation happening at the border. You know, people like AOC and Rashida Tlaib come out and they're crying and they're so emotional. Here, check this out.
Tears and passion on Capitol Hill today as the House Oversight Committee focused on what's happening to migrant children detained at the border. Testifying were lawmakers from both parties who had visited detention facilities. Republicans defended the Border Patrol agents facing a crush of arrivals, more than tripling numbers in the past.
And what was worst about this, Mr. Chairman, was the fact that there were American flags hanging all over these facilities, that children were being separated from their parents in front of an American flag, that women were being called these names under an American flag.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Chairman, it needs to be noted into record. I spoke to CPB agents, even though they told us not to speak to them, too. Remember that? And I said, what do you think we need to do because you guys are overwhelmed? They said, one of them, stop sending money. It's not working. Another one said, I wasn't trained for this. I am not a social worker. I am not a medical care worker. He actually said, I want to be at the border. That's what I was trained to be at.
But some of the most compelling sound came not from a member of Congress, but a lawyer who monitors migrant facilities and spoke directly with these children.
Many had not brushed their teeth for days. They were wearing the same clothes they had on when they crossed the border, clothes that were covered in nasal mucus, vomit, breast milk, urine. Multiple children had a strong stench emanating from them because they had not showered in days.
All of this comes as the Oversight Committee just issued a report finding that at least 18 migrant children under the age of 2 had been kept from their parents anywhere from 20 days to 6 months.
Man, well, you know what? It's just so good that they finally come out and finally admit that there's a problem at the border. Psych, that was actually in 2019 when Donald Trump was president. You guys remember that. Kids in cages. You remember that. All the Democrats went down to the southern border and said, wow, we really need to do something. You heard them. AOC crying and Rashida Tlaib crying. What do you think, folks? You think those kids would rather be in cages? You think they'd rather be behind a fence? Or do you think they would rather be sex slaves in the interior of our country? Ladies and gentlemen, not one Democrat, not one, has condemned this. Not one has condemned the open borders. Nobody. Democrats aren't even admitting that there's even a problem at the southern border. It is absolutely incredible. We have record numbers of migrant crossings on our southern border. 6 million in 2.5 years. 6 million. We're supposed to be taking in 1 million. That's what our country can handle. And we let them assimilate. When they're coming in the right way, we allow 1 million immigrants a year into our country. Okay? 6 million have came into our country. 6 million. It's just so unbelievable what this Biden administration is doing to this country, what the Biden administration is doing with the southern border, and Title 42 is getting ready to go away in a couple weeks. They said there's 1 million immigrants waiting for Title 42 to drop, and they're going to rush the border. Absolute disaster. And it's just a shame that AOC and Rashida Tlaib can bring those crocodile tears and all their womanhood emotions into an oversight committee when Donald Trump was president, even though the border was probably the best it's been in decades. But when Joe Biden's president, it's not even a problem. The hypocrisy we are witnessing right now is just so blatantly obvious, man. I mean, it's not even hypocrisy anymore. It is just complete, authoritarian. It's like we do what we want to do, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. Health and Human Services HHS whistleblower Tara Lee Rodas spoke with the Daily Caller News Foundation exclusively alleging that the U.S. government doesn't involve law enforcement in vetting sponsors of migrant children. Amid a surge in illegal migration at the southern border, Rodas, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Rodas, it's Rodas, Rodas, made the decision to volunteer with HHS to help reunite children with their families, which she soon found to be unrelated and criminal sponsors in some cases. Quote, "It's been a very hard journey, but I was looking at the faces of the children. I've heard young girls screaming for their mom in home country. I watched children have panic attacks. Children had to be put on suicide watch. They don't know where they're going. This is just unacceptable," Rodas told the DCNF. This is insane, folks. They're letting these children into our country with complete strangers, with criminals, and they're being sold for sex slaves and literally modern day slavery. So the Biden administration is involved in the biggest slave trade in United States history. I mean, if we're talking about 85,000 children, I mean, what the hell is going on? What is a matter with this administration? This is why I say if the Biden administration would have just left things alone, things would be a lot better than they are now. The article continues, "We must have proper vetting, and that's the only way. It has to be the law enforcement. The contractors, they're just regular people. The case managers, they don't have a law enforcement background. They can't pull up a history. They can't know if someone is a registered sex offender or not. Only law enforcement will know that." In 2021, Rodas voluntarily deployed to the Emergency Intake Center in Pomona, California, to assist with the surge of unaccompanied children crossing the southern border. Federal authorities at the southern border have seen a surge of migrant children crossing without any adults. In fiscal year 2022, Border Patrol agents recorded roughly 150,000 encounters of unaccompanied child migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data. The children are quickly placed in the care of HHS under its Office of Refugee Resettlement, where they're released to sponsors. Rodas said HHS typically released children within 10 to 14 days of arrival to intake the center. But no reasonable person could sit back and watch children be trafficked. No reasonable person could sit back and say, I'm going to be okay with children being raped, children being in these horrible working conditions. I did not know one child had ever been trafficked through the program. I now know that this has been going on for a decade. Rodas also spoke to retaliation she faced for speaking out, saying HHS walked her off-site when she provided information to the Department of Justice Officer of Inspector General. I would absolutely do it again. I do not regret it. It's been a very hard and painful journey. Scary. I was nearly hyperventilating, telling me that my whole career could be going up in flames, that I could be potentially be sent home, and I was under investigation. What is this administration doing, man? Quote, "They were trying to discredit me after my long service. I cannot, as an IG professional, imagine anything worse than being discredited. And so it was a scary thing. But the thing that was worse than that was knowing that children were being put in victim situations and I couldn't stand for it. I just couldn't. So I was willing to do whatever it took to tell the truth. It's been a very hard journey, a very hard journey. Quote, my life will never be the same. I'm okay with that. If Congress does something, they've got to do something. They have to take action. Swift action must be taken to safeguard the lives of these children. But, now during the Biden administration, it's no problem for AOC. It's no problem for Rashida Tlaib. Where are the Democrats? Where the hell is the Democrat Party on this? Where are the picketers? Where are the protesters chanting kids in cages, kids in cages? Now you just have kids and sex slaves. Like, this is literally modern day slave trade that the United States government is orchestrating and looking over. This will go down in history as one of the worst things the Biden administration has ever done. This is insane, folks. This is disgusting. 85,000 kids? They don't know where they're at? We don't even know. I mean, they could be dead. They don't even they have no idea who these kids went to. They went to somebody. They released them to somebody, I hope. But here's the problem. The Biden administration is so obsessed with just getting as many people into this country as possible that they don't even care about the vetting process. They don't want a holding system to where they vet properly, and they ask for paperwork, and then they give them a court date, catch and release. No, it's essentially they want to mechanize the processing system So much so that they're actually granting asylum right then and there, right on the border. Just giving them a paper. Here you go. Go get a Social Security card. You can get benefits and welfare. Right then and there. They got an app on their phone, folks. So, and I know when people say, well, the borders aren't actually open. They are de facto open borders. We have no borders, okay? None. They are just flowing in. Like the floodgates have been open and they are rushing in. And there's nothing this administration's doing about it. They're not stopping the immigration. They're just processing faster. And that is what I'm talking about. And so, I'm telling you, history is not going to judge this moment very well. And where are all the Democrats? Like I said, where's AOC and her crocodile tears? Where's all the protesters talking about kids in cages? I ask you, do you think these kids would be better off in a cage, separated from their parents? Or do you think they'd be better off as sex slaves on the interior of the country and having to work for the Mexican drug cartel to pay them back? I mean, can this administration do anything else wrong? Everything that this administration touches, it destroys. It is so crazy, man. Like, I wouldn't even let Joe Biden run a lemonade stand. And if I have any leftists listening, you know you wouldn't either. You would not let Joe Biden run your business. I don't care. I wouldn't let Joe Biden run a hot dog stand. Because A, I'd be afraid I'd go out of business, or B, I would go out of business because he was stealing my money. So it's like, how in the world did Democrats think that electing Joe Biden would have been a good idea? You knew better. You knew better. I can't say that because honestly, I think a lot of people didn't know better. That's what I think the problem is. But also, I think Democrats cheat. They rigged the election, folks. Okay? That's right. I said it. They rigged the 2020 election. It was rigged. All right? We know that now. I mean, if you're not going to count the illegal and unconstitutional law changes to election laws weeks and months before the election by Perkins Coie and Mark Elias, then you can at least narrow it down and say that 51 former Intel officials that lied on that paper saying that the laptop was Russian disinformation in order to sway the election, that is rigging an election, folks. They rigged the election. Those 51 Intel officers rigged the election so that they can get Joe Biden across the finish line. It's not even a speculation. We know that because that is what they said. Mike Morrell said he did it. He said he signed that paper because he wanted Joe Biden to win the election. So, I mean, under oath, he said that. That's his own words. And so I don't know how else to explain this to you, but this is going to be awful for the Biden administration. This is going to go down. This isn't going to get better. So, if Joe Biden really is serious about running for re-election, he's better fix the southern border because this is awful. They're actually participating in record amounts of human trafficking. That is insane. They are taking people, putting them on buses, driving them all over the country, putting them on planes. This is all information that you can get, folks. All of this. I mean, when you're talking about 150,000 people a month coming across the border, where are they going? Because they're not just hanging out at the border. They're driving them and flying them all over the place. And so this is, man, dude, like Barack Obama was right when he said, do not underestimate Joe Biden's ability to screw things up. And he was right, man. Was he freaking right? All right, one last thing I want to get into is, which is another, obviously, an important thing. The Biden Energy Secretary, Jennifer Granholm, was in a oversight committee the other day, essentially saying that she wants the U.S. military to adopt an all-electric vehicle fleet in 7 years. Where did they get these people? This is what happens when you're too worried about checkmarking a box when filling your administration than just getting the right people for the job. This woman is insane. Okay? She is absolutely insane. And not only that, but it's like we are pushing this electric vehicle stuff so hard that it's actually causing massive amounts of damage to our economy, to our society, and to our country. And not only is it damaging us, but it's emboldening and enriching China. So all the stuff that we get for the electric vehicles all comes from China. And I don't want to hear about the CHIPS Act and all that stupid stuff. I don't want to hear that. That's like the only thing I can hear Democrats say that Joe Biden did that was good, is the CHIPS Act. I'm sorry, folks. Using taxpayer dollars to subsidize billion-dollar companies in Silicon Valley is not a good thing. Okay? Especially if you're paying them to do what they were doing already. That's not good. That's actually bad. All right? No, I don't like subsidizing billionaires and their companies. No, I don't. So who do you think benefits the most from Joe Biden's administration? The wealthy elites or the middle class? I would say probably the wealthy elites. So I got an article here from Breitbart dated April 26th, hat tip to Christina Wong. Biden Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm testified Wednesday to the Senate Armed Service Committee that she supported requiring the United States military to move an all-electric non-vehicle fleet by 2030. Folks, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. She added, and I do think that reducing our reliance on the volatility of globally traded fossil fuels, where we know that global events such as war in Ukraine can jack up prices for people back home, it does not contribute to energy security. We had energy security already, folks. We were producing so much energy, we were exporting it. For the first time ever in United States history, the United States was energy independent. Not just energy independent, but we were producing so much, we were selling it to other countries. And the first week the Biden administration came in, signed all of that away. Whatever bill they put under his schnoz, he signed, and it completely destroyed our energy independence. And that's why our gas prices went to $5 a gallon. And it hasn't been the same since. All your groceries increase, all the stuff and products that you're having to pay more money for is because the energy prices. Your energy bill has went up 30%. I know, you look at your energy bill, I know it's probably went up. That's because of stuff like this. Because of the Biden administration. For whatever reason, they want to choke out our country's energy production and then buy energy from other countries. Most countries that hate us. Places like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, and so on and so forth. The only people benefiting from our country being this stupid is China and places like India. That is the only people benefiting. We are not benefiting from the stupid climate change religion, man. We're just not. The article continues. All right, so I actually have the audio of her right here during the committee. Here, let's listen to this.
Military adopting that EV fleet by 2030?
I do, and I think we can get there as well. And I do think that reducing our reliance on the volatility of globally traded fossil fuels, where we know that global events such as the war in Ukraine can jack up prices for people back home, it does not contribute to energy security. I think energy security is achieved when we have homegrown clean energy that is abundant, like you see in Iowa. We think that we can be a leader globally in how we have become energy independent.
We already were energy independent. This is what I don't get. It's like these people think we're stupid. We were already creating energy at an abundance back at home. We already had energy security. But Joe Biden signed it all away. He sanctioned our energy and relieved sanctions from Russia and started buying oil from countries that hate us. This is why I say they are purposely destroying this country. They're doing all this stuff on purpose because they want to destroy this country. There's no other reason you would do something like that. None. Article continues. Ernst has been a staunch critic of the Biden administration's push for electric vehicles, which she says requires lithium and cobalt, which are often mined and processed with slave labor in China or child labor in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yes, we talked about this in one of my last episodes. We talked about this was part of the climate religion. And if we have time, I may read that Australian Gazette article that I have that actually goes through everything that is required to make solar panels, windmills, and lithium batteries. And it is jaw-dropping, folks. The amount of minerals and natural resources. I mean, it is not green. It is not environmentally friendly. Let's just say that. The article continues. Last year, Ernst, a combat veteran and retired Iowa National Guard colonel, succeeded in including a provision in the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act prohibiting electric vehicle component sourcing from any entity that uses child or slave labor. The provision also requires a report detailing the costs associated with replacing the Department of Defense's 170,000 non-tactical vehicles with electric ones. The cost of that required infrastructure to support doing so, as well as current and projected sourcing shortfalls. On Tuesday, she tweeted, President Biden's new EV rule is not only unsustainable and unaffordable, it makes us more reliant on foreign adversaries and their immoral forced labor practices. Yeah. That is the sad part about all of this. I mean, all of this. It's like these people think, oh, yeah, just make batteries and then it just pulls electricity out of nowhere. And then, yeah, it's just out of sight, out of mind. They have, they don't think about anything. They don't think about where the electricity comes from. Most likely liquid natural gas power plants or coal-fired powered plants, or not nuclear, because I hate nuclear, which is another dumb thing to do. Nuclear is the most efficient way of producing energy that mankind has created throughout our history, but they want to ban it. So it's like opposite world, folks. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we're living in opposite world. It's like every day is April Fool's. But yeah, I mean, what is she thinking about, man? Like, you're going to replace a tank with a battery-powered tank? Like, what are you going to convince Putin to put recharging stations on the battlefield? What are you going to tell him? Hey, Putin, hang on a minute. I need about 3.5 hours to charge our tanks here. So if you could just sit and wait for a minute, I'd appreciate that. What are you going to have? Battery-powered helicopters? I mean, this climate change gimmick I wouldn't care. I really wouldn't care if, for one, I wasn't paying for it through our tax dollars, and all of our tax dollars are going to this huge energy climate gimmick. But for two, is I know it's not going to do anything. It's a fool's errand. It's a wash. And so it's like taking your money and burning it. Literally burning it. Or what's even worse is you're giving it to somebody else to burn. If money is going to be burned, folks, I would rather burn it myself, because at least I would get a little bit of entertainment out of it. But what we're doing is giving money away and watching them burn it. That's what this entire climate change gimmick is. And so, and that's one thing. And then something else is we are weakening ourselves while making China more powerful, because all this stuff comes from China. I have this awesome article about what goes into a 1,000-pound lithium battery. Let me see. Yeah, the Australian Review. All right, so I got it right here. So this is March 16th of 2022. Batteries do not make electricity. They store electricity produced elsewhere, primarily by coal, uranium, natural gas-powered plants, or diesel-fueled generators. So to say an EV is a zero-emission vehicle is not at all valid. Also, since 40% of the electricity generated in the U.S. is from coal-fired plants, it follows that 40% of the EVs on the road are coal-powered. But that is not even the half of it. For those of you excited about electric cars and a green revolution, I want you to take a closer look at batteries and also windmills and solar panels. A typical EV battery weighs 1,000 pounds, about the size of a travel trunk. It contains 25 pounds of lithium, 60 pounds of nickel, 44 pounds of manganese, 30 pounds of cobalt, 200 pounds of copper, and 400 pounds of aluminum, steel, and plastic. Inside are over 6,000 individual lithium-ion cells. To manufacture each EV auto battery, you must process 25,000 pounds of brine for lithium, 30,000 pounds of ore for cobalt, 5,000 pounds of ore for nickel, and 25,000 pounds for ore and for the copper. All told, you dig up 500,000 pounds of Earth's crust for one battery. The main problem with solar arrays is the chemicals needed to process silicate into silicone used in the panels. To make pure enough silicone requires processing it with the hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid, hydrogen fluoride, trichloroethene, and acetone. In addition, they also need gallium, arsenide, copper indium gallium, diselenide, and cadmium telluride. which also are highly toxic. Silicone dust is a hazard to the workers, and the panels cannot be recycled. Let me repeat, the panels cannot be recycled. So these millions of square acres of solar panels you see out there, just know that in 30 years when those need replaced, they cannot be recycled. So just remember that. That is important to know, folks. That is important to know, especially with the issue California is having right now with the chemicals from the solar panels leaking into the water table at the landfills because people's solar panels are going bad. And they're dumping them in the landfills. And all those chemicals are leaking into the water table. Doesn't sound good. But again, another example of the unintended consequences from Democrats' awful bad ideas. So I'll continue. Windmills are the ultimate in embedded costs and environmental destruction. Each weighs 1,688 tons, the equivalent of 23 houses, and contains 1,300 tons of concrete, 295 tons of steel, 48 tons of iron, 24 tons of fiberglass, and the hard-to-extract rare earths neodymium, a parasitium, and dysprosium. Each blade weighs 81,000 pounds and will last 15 to 20 years, at which that time it must be replaced. We cannot recycle the used blades. There may be a place for these technologies, but you must look beyond the myth of zero emissions. Going green may sound like the utopia idea, but when you look at the hidden and embedded costs, realistically with an open mind, you can see that going green is more destructive to Earth's environment than meets the eye. I'm not opposed to mining, electric vehicles, wind, or solar, but showing the reality of the situation is necessary. There you go, folks. So now you know what goes into one 1,000-pound lithium battery. So now you know why people need to open their eyes to this entire green revolution that this government is shoving down our throats. I'm sorry, I almost cussed there. I almost dropped the F-bomb there. I don't want to do that. But now you know why this is such a bad idea. And not only that, but everything and all this stuff, the cobalt, the copper, the aluminum, all these sources, the acids for the processing the solar panels, all of it comes from China. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not good, considering China wants to replace us as the number one superpower. I mean, China's leaders are walking circles around our leaders, and our leaders are essentially opening the door for them. I mean, it's like, hey, yeah, come on in. It's like, it's so crazy, man. It's so crazy. It's just mind-blowing. And so one last thing before we go, I wanted you people to know the insanity that the Democrat Party is putting us through right now. I wanted you to know the insanity of these policies we're dealing with between the border policies, okay, and the climate policies, and the police state, the absolutely totalitarianism we're witnessing from the Democrat Party, going over to judges' homes and leaking SCOTUS rulings and leaking judge rulings, and leaking rulings from the Supreme Court of Justice, so that the stormtroopers and the protesters can go over judges' homes, protest, intimidate them, and attempt to assassinate one of them. Okay, that is what we're dealing with, folks. So we got some serious issues. It's like, it's so hard to explain. It's like we're so divided, and it's the United States, the left and the right cannot agree on anything anymore. The left and the right have absolutely nothing in common anymore. Like we used to share fundamental values. Like, we used to all love our country. We used to respect the flag. We used to be a colorblind society. We used to think abortion should be safe, legal, but rare. We used to leave the kids out of the politics and all this stuff. We used to know, like, yeah, we all want to keep our waterways and our air clean, like, but at what extent will we, as long as it's not hurting people, It's like we don't agree on anything anymore. The left has completely went off the rails with some of this stuff, and we are most definitely on a pivot point. There's no doubt about it. So if it feels like, if you feel like you're confused and like extremely depressed, not depressed, but if you feel like you're extremely demoralized because A, you're confused, and B, you don't even know like what the future holds. So that's one thing. It's like one thing is it's bad enough to be confused, but it's even worse to be confused and not even know where you're at. You know, and to not even know what direction you need to go in. That is something we're witnessing right now, and I think it's because we're on a pivot point. Things are about ready to change, folks. It has gotten too bad. We cannot function like this. We cannot have a functioning society with this much insanity into our society. We just can't. So I have an audio clip here. It's a little long. I tried to cut it up as much as I could for time. So it's about 4 minutes long, but this guy absolutely nails it. I think he's asking the questions all of us have, and he's asking the perfect person. Jennifer Granholm, the Energy Secretary. So here, check this out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, I have a few questions. Earlier this year, at a music festival in Austin, you noted that climate change is an existential threat. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And by existential threat, you mean it threatens the very existence of humanity right now. Is that your belief?
Well, right now, I would say no. We know that we have a goal to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but we also know that every single year we see escalating weather events that are existential threats to communities around the globe, including in the United States.
So what's the timeline?
Well, we want to make sure that we do not see more than, 1.5 degrees of increase because the rise in sea levels, the impacts on the ecosystems around the world.
So even if you accept the premise that human beings can sort of control the weather here long term, right? That there aren't larger forces, that the earth is either cooling or it's warming, and that has happened, since the existence of our planet, that has happened. And you have this net zero goal by 2050. You would agree, though, that if China and India are not on board, it's a fool's errand, correct?
We want China and India.
No, but they're not.
Well, they are moving in that direction. I mean, China.
Well, actually, this leads to the second question. You've said that there's a lot to learn from what China is doing. China accounts for a full 25% of the world's emissions, correct?
Correct. And we want them to stop that.
Okay, but they're not. They're not stopping that. India is not stopping that. So I think the concern that I have and the folks back home have is that the United States of America, which has all the natural resources it will ever need, okay, is tying one arm behind our back for reliable energy. While China, the world's biggest polluter, you give a free pass to and you praise to at the same music festival saying we've got a lot to learn from China. When the reality is, if China's not on board with your plan, even if you agreed with that being the goal, it's not going to make a difference at all. So all we're left with is higher costs here at home, and we're less secure at home because we're relying on other countries for energy, like Venezuela, like Saudi Arabia. And I want to ask you, since Joe Biden has taken office, he's drawn down 40% of that strategic petroleum reserve, correct?
It has been drawn down by about 180 million barrels.
I think that's 40%. But we haven't had sort of an emergency that would cause it, other than I think he wanted to probably try to get gas prices lower.
War in Ukraine is the emergency that caused it.
That's why we shipped those petroleum reserves to China? Because of the war in Ukraine? I'm sorry.
No, we released 1 million barrels per day for 6 months to stabilize the global production.
But we shipped those to China.
No.
China was the highest bidder. And those strategic petroleum went to China.
The strategic petroleum reserves are released on a global market.
So Ukraine is the reason then why we drew down by 40% our strategic petroleum reserves and sent them to China.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine pulled millions of barrels of oil off the market, causing a constriction in supply.
Madam Secretary, I'm sorry. I would argue that this president and this administration's war on American energy started well before Ukraine. It started well before a year ago. And you're right in the middle of that. Telling people that they have to live with less.
We are not telling people they
absolutely
have to live
you
with
are.
less. No, we
Absolutely
want them to. We want energy to be abundant. We want it to be made in the United States.
If you really believed in an all of the above approach, I would believe you, but you don't. That has certainly not been the direction of this administration and your agency. It just hasn't. And I do want to ask you, so we talked about China. I want to ask you about Microvast, which is a lithium battery company that operates primarily out of the People's Republic of China. Your agency granted $200 million worth of a grant to this company.
Yep. So Microvast is a mostly Chinese company. Even though they have an establishment here, they have a headquarters here in Texas, but they primarily operate out of China. And some reports say they are connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Do you see what's happening here, folks? This is why we need to stop this climate Zionism, man. This climate religion has to stop, because we cannot continue watching our country get destroyed by some stupid religion. And we're not even able to debate these things. It's not even like these are ideas that are being debated on the stage and we may do them. Depends on, you share your idea and let's talk about this. No, I mean, there are executive orders being signed that are sending billions of dollars to start all these programs. And these programs, the people that are bidding on these programs are Chinese companies. It is insane. So it's like I always said, 3 random people out of a phone book could run this country better than this. I mean, these decisions that are being made are just the wrong decisions. But even a broken clock is right twice a day. So it's like, how could they be getting this wrong so bad? And they can't, folks. It's because they are doing this on purpose. There is no other reason why you would sanction your own country's energy and then relieve sanction from Russia. There's no reason why you would stop producing oil and energy in your own country so you can buy it from places like Venezuela and Russia and Saudi Arabia. There's no reason why you would sanction your energy production, your oil and your fossil fuel production, so that you can buy natural resources like cobalt and copper from China. And so it just doesn't make sense, because I'm sorry, folks, but Saudi Arabia and places like Venezuela, they are not producing fossil fuels as clean as we produce fossil fuels. So I assure you, their production methods for producing fossil fuels, drilling, liquid natural gas, fracking, that is absolutely putting 50 times more junk into our environment than if we did it here. So it's like, it doesn't make sense why you would stop producing in your own country, kneecap your country's energy production so that you can buy energy from another country, but makes it with putting a lot more pollution into the environment. So it's like, you want to stop producing energy in your country, so because you want to stop polluting the environment, but then you're getting it from a country that produces it and pumps 50 times more pollution into the environment. And you're buying it off of them. And they're shipping it here in the ocean on a freighter, on a freight ship. That's pumping pollution into the oceans. So you're putting more pollution into the air and you're putting pollution into the ocean. So it just doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. So it has to be on purpose. And so I'm going to probably... I wanted to get into those 3 articles today. I thought those were the most important events that are happening. We're obviously not done with the Justice Alito thing. I think he's going to come out and leak that name. And then obviously reporters and journalists can get into that. The southern border is still a disaster. And it's just a shame that Democrats were willing to go on the line and give the American people crocodile tears when the Trump administration, during the Trump administration, they just make it all political, folks. It's always been like that. It's just a shame that people fall for the Democrats' emotional BS, man. You know, they do all this stuff to get votes. And I'm not saying Republicans don't, but it's like, for the first time, we had a president that was actually fixing things around this place. He was actually going to put up a border wall for the first time. That should have been something we did years ago. And he wanted $5 billion for the wall. And the Democrats voted no. They voted no. These people hate you. Okay? They don't want you safe. They want walls around their house, but not around yours. They want guns to protect them, but they don't want you to have a gun to protect you. They hate you. And for some reason, and I don't know why, for the life of me, people still vote for these Democrats. I really don't. I'm not saying Republicans are better, but I'm saying Donald Trump was the first Republican I ever voted for and probably will ever vote for again. I don't know. I mean, I voted Democrat, then I was an independent, and then I voted Republican. So I don't know. It's just a shame that the one guy that comes in, okay, not in politics, he's not a politician, okay, he was a businessman. He was like the perfect person that this country needed. A successful businessman that wasn't a politician to come in and fix things. A fixer. We needed a fixer. Donald Trump was a fixer. You give him an ice ring, he'll fix it. You give him a golf course, he'll fix it. Under budget, in time. We get him elected to the country, to our presidency, to the White House, so that he could fix our country, and the Democrats hate him. They want to destroy him. They want to crush him like a bug. They want to throw him in prison for the rest of his life. What does that tell you? And not just the Democrats. The establishment themselves want to destroy Trump. They fear him. They cannot allow him to come in here and show people that the country can be fixed. They cannot allow him to come in here and show people that one person, a president, can bring peace and prosperity around the world. They cannot have that, because then you don't need them anymore. These people do nothing but think about themselves, folks. They do nothing but think about their own power, their own wallets, their own bank accounts, and their own families. That is it. They hate you. They have to hate you, or else they would actually do things to help you. And I'm sorry, they just don't. $5 billion to build a wall? And the whole phrase, walls don't work, is the stupidest phrase I have ever heard in my entire life. Walls don't work? It's just so dumb and moronic when you think about it. Who honestly said walls don't work? Of course they frickin' work, you moron. They've worked for thousands of years. If they didn't work, then why do you have them around your housing complex? Why do all the politicians have them around their homes? No, it's not going to stop 100% of the flow, but it's going to slow things down. It's going to help. Every single person on the southern border, you ask if a wall would help, they would say yes. And no, they don't get it. $5 billion. How much money did we give to Ukraine for their politicians' pensions and 401ks? $5 billion, $20 billion, how much? I think we're still paying their pensions and 401ks over there. Don't people think that's a little much? Like, don't you think like guns, ammo, and tanks are kind of good? We gotta support their pensions. I mean, man, folks, man. And you know, if Donald Trump giving this place the best 4 years it's seen in decades, if that's not enough to show you that, and seeing the stark differences between that administration and this administration, if that's not enough to show you the difference, then you deserve Joe Biden and you deserve the Democrats. Because I'm sorry, folks, but I can't hate a person enough to allow my country to be destroyed. So I wanted to talk about that. The show has went on for too long. Hour and a half's good. I'm going to have to cut this down to something reasonable. I just want my country good, man. I want Democrats and Republicans both doing good. I want everybody peace. I want peace. I want prosperity. I want everybody happy. I want people to have the food that they need. I want people to have the health care that they need. I want all that stuff. Okay? But you can't get it for free. It's like society in American society has lost its way. It's like people have lost their moral compass. And I'm telling you, and I've been saying this for years, the more God is taken out of our society, the more religion is removed from our society, the worse things get. People don't believe in anything anymore. The only thing they worship is themselves. Everybody's just so self-centered. The only thing that matters is yourself. I need to keep my job. I need to make more money. I need to be rich and famous. I. Everything is just so self-centered anymore, man. And it's a shame. It's a shame because I feel like that is the reason why we're watching our society crumble and fall apart. Like the Roman Empire. Yep, like the Roman Empire. I don't know if you listen to my past episodes, but it was kind of weird. And I think Joe Rogan mentioned it on his show too, that out of all the there was like 4 or 5 major civilizations in our history, between like the Mongols, the Romans, the Chinese, and all of them had a uprising and a massive debate and uprising about their gender. They had the same gender questions. They were like going through the same gender, the whole genderism, the whole transgenderism thing we're going through now. Not transgenderism, but the arguments and the things that led to their downfalls, or not the things that led. They don't know if those are the reasons why. But all of those major empires and civilizations were debating on gender before they fell. And so I thought that was actually kind of weird. And so if you go back, I think it's called I did an episode on it. I think it's called The More Religion is Removed from Society, the Worse Things Get. And I read an article about just that, about the more these civilizations, governments and leaders, they didn't have governments like we do, but the more the leadership took the founding religion out of the society, the countries fell. The societies collapsed because they took the founding religion, whatever it was, the founding principles out from the society. The societies all collapsed. And so that's what scares me now. And I just feel like, it's like something drove me to start making the show and talking to people about this stuff, because I just kind of see it on the horizon. And I feel like if we do not change course, then we're not going to have a country anymore, folks. And there's not going to be anything for anybody, regardless of free stuff. Whether you want free stuff or not, it's not going to be there. And what's even more worrisome is there's nowhere else to go. The United States of America is the last stand, folks. We are the one and only country that is like this. We are the last stand. There's nothing like this country, man. There's just not. I tell my kids all the time, you can do anything here. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. And you can, folks. You can. You want to open a business? You can do it. You want to be an astronaut? You can do it. If you just think about it and work hard for it, you could do it. Only in America can you go from rags and riches, man. Only in America can a guy with a hot dog stand work his way up to being a massive corporate, work his way up to being a massive hot dog stand corporation. Only in America can that happen. And, it's a shame that we're seeing so much damage being caused to this by some of the most stupid stuff. It's so dumb, the stuff that we debate and argue about, man. And it used to be so simple. Like say the Pledge of Allegiance and go to church on Sundays. Be happy, love thy neighbor, don't riot and loot and steal, honor thy mother and father. All that stuff, man. It's like we lost it. The United States has lost its moral compass, and we're in the dark with no light, and we're just roaming around trying to find ourselves. And, I definitely believe it's going to get better, but I also think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I do. I definitely think we're on a pivot point, and we'll find out this coming election. We'll find out. It's a shame that our rise and fall of our society all relies on our elections. And not only that, but you have corrupt elections. You have the leadership that has actually absolutely destroyed our election process. And so that's what makes it even worse. And so I don't know, but I have a suggestion for my listeners. If you're listening to this episode, I want you to try something. This is something that I notice once in a while. When things start to get too crazy and you just got to step away for a little bit, or not even if you're just starting to wonder about your place in life, I want you to go out on a cloudless night when there's stars in the sky, and I want you to just look up at the stars for 20 minutes. And I promise you, you will have the most humbling experience you've ever had in your life. It is really game-changing for me. I've been doing it my entire life. I've been a stargazer my entire life. And what it does is it just makes you realize your place in this life. And it makes you realize your place in the cosmos and how infinitely small you are in the greater picture. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys. It's something that I've been doing my entire life, and I feel like it would help a lot of people out there. Just go out, go by yourself. You don't have to do it with anybody. Go out there, and I want you to just look up at the stars, and I want you to think that every single one of those stars is a sun, and most of those suns have planets around them. And then I want you to think about what you're looking at going on forever. It just goes and goes and goes and goes, and there's no end. Well, they don't know if there's an end or not, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. And it's just so crazy to think how vast and how big space is. And by doing that, it makes you feel small, and it makes you really appreciate your place in life. It humbles you is what it does. It humbles you. It's a very humbling experience, and it just kind of corrects everything. It makes you realize, your position in life and what all this means. And just know that I don't think we're not meant to find the answers. We're not meant to know what happens after you die. We're probably never going to find out those answers. We're not going to know why we're here. What is everything? Why are we here? We're not going to know those things. We're never going to get those answers. I don't think we're meant to have those answers. And that is the beauty in life. And that's what makes this life so beautiful. It makes you appreciate life a lot more when you find your position in the cosmos, when you find your place in the stars. It makes you appreciate your life a whole lot more. We're only here for a short time, folks. And we're here for a good time, not a long time. So that's all I got for today's show. I just want you guys to have a good day, have a great week. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.